Hello everyone and welcome to HY Dyslexia Show. Today we will be speaking to an awesome young man who have got a great organisation helping dyslexics to access the job market. Now, I just want to say thank you for watching our live shows. Thank you for following us. Thank you for sharing it, everybody. This show has been kindly funded by the European Social Fund Agency, Education Skills Funding Agency as well. We are so grateful to have got the funding to support the dyslexic community in terms of work, employability, and entrepreneurship, startups, whatever your goal is in life. Now, I feel really excited to introduce our guest speaker today. I'm always very careful using the word this evening because somebody could be watching it anywhere and it could be afternoon for them, or it could be, I don't know, midnight in other countries. So I normally try to kind of get myself away from this evening. So do pardon me. But it is amazing to have the awesome Nathaniel Hawley, who will be joining us and talking about the work that he does, working with dyslexics, find the right job within the job market. So I would like to introduce Nathaniel. Welcome to HY Dyslexia Live Show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and I love the work that you guys do.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Nathaniel, I have always been looking for you, I must be honest. And I saw you on TV a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago, something like that. And I was like, wow, you were doing such an amazing job. And the reason why I kind of drew to what you're doing is because I have been unemployed before as a dyslexic. In fact, many times where I've started a job, I felt like I wasn't fitting in. I felt like I couldn't perform in a job, and I've hopped and left. Now, when I've left, I'm like, where do I go now? There's only one place that normally, or two or three places that people could go to look for work, as in face to face. And one of the places I used to go to a JCP, Job Centre Plus, which I believe you do some work with, or you have done some work with them in the past. And I think the job you do is really, really amazing. Now, just before we start, I want to let people know who I am and what organization we're from. So I did say HY Dyslexia initially. My name's Elizabeth Techi. I'm the founder of HY Dyslexia. One of the areas that we really, really hammer on is employability and work market for dyslexic people. And Nathaniel, I couldn't say, you're doing a great, amazing job doing what you're doing to kind of connect the dots is what we call it. So please give us a little bit of introduction about who you are and why you do the job you do.
Okay, brilliant. Well, yeah, hi everyone. I'm Nathaniel, or Nat, whatever you prefer, and I am dyslexic, dyspraxic, got a bit of autism, a bit of OCD knocking about. So I've got I'm on the spectrum for sure. And for me, I think it just means thinking differently. I don't really see it as a disability, but that's not to say it's not. I think it depends where you are on your journey. And it definitely was for me growing up. And it's taken a long time to get to the stage now where I see it as an advantage. And I guess that's kind of what drew me to wanting to support people with dyslexia, because there's we always hear about these amazing talents, you know, like Richard Branson, Bill Gates, John Lennon, like all these like big titans of the dyslexia world. But how do you see yourself as one of these people when you're starting off, when you're struggling to read, when you're failing in school, when you go to the job centre and they say, oh, okay, here's a cleaning job for you, or supermarket. You know, there's nothing wrong with those jobs, but it's hardly the most, you know, inspirational for someone who is hungry. And I'm very fortunate that, you know, life happened to work okay for me. I got the right opportunities. But I just see time and time again, so many people who have what it takes to do something they love in life, whatever that may be, but aren't able to articulate themselves or communicate in a way which lets people see the talents they have. And from there is one of the reasons why I ended up joining Exceptional Individuals. I've always been an advocate for people who think differently. And when I got the opportunity to do it as my full-time job, you know, couldn't be happier. And as Lizzie rightly mentioned, we support people who are go like after the school stage, because you might not think it's great, but there is support in school and there is support in college and equipment and funding. But if you're used to all this support and then it just drops off, where are you meant to go? It's kind of like living at home with your mum all those years and you go off to university and you've got no cooking skills. You kind of need to prepare in advance. So that's kind of what we do, either for people who have just left university, got a lovely degree, got all the proof in the world that they can do what they can do, but they might lack the interview skills. They might not be able to pass the interview stage for whatever reason. Or you could be someone who's been stuck in middle management for years, has everything they need to be like a director or CEO of their own company, but maybe it's just 10% of the job, which they might struggle with. Maybe it's the admin, the communication, the documentation, the socializing. And what we try to do is just fill in that last 10%. So it's not reinventing the wheel, it's just pushing people that little bit more to be able to do something which has meaning and they feel content and happy with. So a lot of a mouthful, but that's what we do.
That is amazing. It's amazing because someone once contacted me and I think they might have got your organization and our organization mixed up. And I was like, how'd you get the two mixed up? And then, well, you do employability and they do employability. And I just wanted to explain to our viewers and our listeners at the moment that we actually deal with community. So we're talking about that person who's probably been unemployed for 10, 15 years, a year, however long it's been. I've been there before and I know what it's like to be unemployed and you just you can't find that job you're looking for. We have so many people that come to us that have got amazing skills, great talents, and they can do more than maybe, for example, the example you gave earlier. But they're finding it a little bit hard to kind of move one step forward. So HY Dyslexia will deal with the root of that issue. So is it the stress you're going through? Is it anxiety? Is it self-esteem? What is it exactly? Whatever it is, we'll deal with that. And then we will kind of work with them. They get to a level where actually, I'm ready for the job market. But we don't deal with the job bit. And that's when I thought, when I explained this to the caller who called, I said, this is when an exceptional individual comes in, because then they pick up from there. Just what I mean? Or you may have in between jobs and you're thinking, actually, I really want to change jobs. I want to be a fashion designer. I want to be a graphic designer. But you know what? I don't know where to go to look for those jobs. This is when I think you guys come in. And I just think, it's great that someone once said to me, all these different organizations of dyslexia organizations, it's great if we can all connect and help and sort of pick up from each other where one will finish off. And I think what's really heartbreaking is maybe to support someone to the bit where they're ready for work. And then we let them go and it's like, you wonder what happened. Did they find work? Did they end up back on benefit? What happened along the way? Although we do keep in touch with our clients and they'll tell us where they're at. But a lot of them will say, actually, I can't find work. I can't find the work I'm looking for. And I think that what the job you do is really fantastic. And hopefully out of this show that we're doing this today, someone can tap into your services and unlock their full potential. Yeah. So that's, I think it's really great that we've both connected with each other. So I'm going to actually dive in straight into my questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. And just ask you a couple of questions so that our viewers or listeners will get a gist of what you do and where they can go for help. So my first question will be, what are the main obstacles someone with dyslexia can face when looking for a job and accessing the job market?
Well, I'd say some of the biggest obstacles for those with dyslexia when it comes to going to the job market, it isn't what you think. It's not the reading, it's not the writing, it's not even anything to do with your abilities necessarily. It's about communication. The biggest difficulty is how you communicate to others and how they understand what they think they know already. Now, dyslexia isn't as glamorous as some of the others. When you think like autism, you're like, oh, a bit interesting, and people are more inquisitive. The reason why dyslexia, which this is a good thing, but also a bad thing, is that everyone thinks they know what dyslexia is, okay? And because they think they know what it is, they feel they don't have to learn more. They don't have to go in a bit more of a deeper dive, like autism, for example. But what we think we know about dyslexia is wrong, is outdated, and thus discrimination kicks in. So not only are you going into a job, you might, for instance, be an amazing coder, but you don't have the communication skills in order to get those skills across. You've then got to explain to someone what dyslexia is. And I kind of think that that's the goal here. The goal isn't trying to get rid of your dyslexia because it's a lifelong thing. The goal is being able to sell your strengths first and then talk about any difficulties. Do not go to an employer and say, all right, guys, I've got dyslexia. This is what I can't do. Because why would anyone want the bargain bin? You know, people want the best of the best. So what you need to do is easy, kinda. You go there and you say, this is what I can do, and this is what I can do better than the others. These are some of the areas I struggle with, but this is how I'm going to overcome it. Go to someone with a solution. Now, the next question probably will be like, how do you find those solutions? But that's the next stage.
Right. Wonderful. I love that. I love what you just said, actually, because I just thought, what a brilliant way to actually go for a job interview and be able to get that job because of it's how you say it, isn't it? Because normally it's how you kind of say things to people that will draw them in. I mean, I've been for so many job interviews in the past, and trust me, Nathaniel, people hire me. They'll just hire me because I'm a good communicator. I can say with a pin. I said this last time on one of our live shows. I'm a good salesperson. I know that for sure. But there are massive weaknesses about me, but I don't think that's the first thing I'll ever mention. So I love the way you put that, this is what I can do. And the other things that may be a struggle, I can find ways around it. And how do you support me to be able to do that? That's so awesome. It's really powerful, that. Thank you so much for that. So then what services does Exceptional Individual offer, and how can these be accessed, I think, by our listeners and our viewers?
All right. Yeah, good question. So how do you actually get involved? Well, there's two parts of the organization, one for our community, so that's those with dyslexia, and we've got one for employers. And we're a social enterprise, which means it's free to use. You can come for us for like support and advice for like the next stage. And it could be, again, one-to-one support, it could be job coaching. It's like we help with the icing on the cake. So you've already got the cake there, you've built it up, you've got all the ingredients. Now it's just for that final touch to help you like land that job. And I think from like Lizzie said, that's a nice progression from A to I. And again, once we've helped you get the competence and like get the jobs, the next stage is finding employment. But it's not just about finding any odd job, because as we talked about before, discrimination is a real thing. Whether it's kind of conscious or unconscious, it's there. So what you will need to do is try and find an organization which is inclusive. Easier said than done, but there's a few starting points. So for one, you could look at being a disability confident employer, a government initiative for companies that have avouched I'm inclusive. Pro, it's somewhere to start. Cons, it's quite easy to sign up for it. So, you've got to choose. The next one is there's like awards where people have won like for being inclusive. Pros, that they've done some initiatives, but the cons are it's probably for the bigger companies. The smaller ones are less likely to get that recognition, despite it might be best for you. And one way that we kind of try to counteract the methods that are out there is we work directly with companies. And I personally train every single company we work with to make sure that they have at least a basic understanding of not only what is dyslexia, but what are the advantages of dyslexia, what is the value it can add to the company, and how do you get the best out of someone with dyslexia. So it's always from a strength-based approach. If we get a job for you or you get a job for yourself, we want it to be not for a pity approach. This isn't a charity. We want it to be because you were the best person for the job. And that's the key. It's about training the employers and training individuals and then bringing them together. You should never think they should be more inclusive. They shouldn't have discriminated against me. The world's not perfect like that. And from an employer's point of view, you can't assume just because someone's lived their whole life with dyslexia, that they understand what it is and they understand how to talk about it. So education on one side, education on the other, bring it together, and hopefully you've got some happy people.
Wonderful. Oh God, honestly, you are doing an amazing job. I mean, I keep saying that, and I was really excited that you were coming on the show today, because I don't think there's many organizations like yours that exist at the moment, to be honest with you. And I don't even think you only serve people with, you obviously you've got dyslexia and all the other neurodiversity conditions. I'm sure, you know, people can tap into your services. Now, I've had people who have got dyslexia and many more conditions combined in one. And this is why I think is great, the kind of work that you're doing. I'm just going to move on to my third question now. At what stage of the application process should I disclose dyslexia or neurodiversity to my employer? At what stage do you think I should do that?
Oh, that's always a really hard question, and it's one we get asked all the time. Now, the answer for someone who's a massive advocate of neurodiversity and dyslexia and all the positives, you would expect that I would say always disclose straight away. I can't say that though, you know, not knowing the world how it is. You know, discrimination's a real thing, and as I mentioned, the key is about you knowing yourself about how to communicate your own mind, and the employer having an understanding. Now, if you come through, say, someone we work with, like an employer, they would have had training. But, you know, the amount of people we have and companies on our lists to the amount of companies there are in the world, you can't. There's going to be jobs you apply for that may not have any understanding. So what I do before I even get to should I disclose, should I not, do your market research. Have they, on their websites, do they have anything about being inclusive? Have they mentioned that they have a neurodiversity network? Have they signed up to be disability confident? What type of training do they offer? Have they mentioned anything about reasonable adjustments on the application forms? Once you found that out, it can give you a good idea about whether or not the person interviewing you has had any training. And judging by that is normally when I choose to disclose. If I can't find any evidence that there's been any training, any understanding, from a personal perspective, I might not mention it, not at the beginning at least, because I don't want to, you know, shoot myself in the foot too early on. But sometimes you should say, because there's schemes where you're guaranteed an interview. Play it by ear, I think, but whenever you choose to tell someone, make sure there's a part where you're able to explain yourself. So if there's just a box saying, do you consider yourself dyslexic? I might not tick that, but if there's a thing saying, how does dyslexia affect you? That's when I actually would talk about it, because then I can kind of say, well, this is my strength. What you want to do is make sure there's no room for misinterpretation. And this is why when someone says, do you have any conditions? I make sure that this isn't just a, yes, let's move on. You know, make sure there's a chance where you can really put your foot forward. A good question, you know, at interviews, one of the worst questions someone could ever ask you is, what's your greatest weakness? That's the question everyone kind of like panics on. And actually, I love that question, because dyslexia is the perfect answer. What's your greatest weakness? I'm dyslexic. And people say, okay, you know, that's a disadvantage. And then you turn the negative into a positive. Well, it means that I struggle in these areas, but as a result, I've had to overcome these, which has built resilience up, has built a skill set which is superior to others. And it also meant that the things I succeeded in, I've been able to progress even further. That's why dyslexic people can be amazing authors. They can be great mathematicians. They can be columnists, journalists, not because of the dyslexia, not despite the dyslexia, but because of the dyslexia. Whether or not you believe Einstein is actually dyslexic or not, it's very debated. But what I do like about it is that his challenges he had in earlier life only pushed him forward to do those complex troubles. It's like, you know, why do we do puzzles? Why do we do Rubik's cubes? We do them because we like the challenge. And that's when I see dyslexia is a puzzle which I enjoy solving because I like the results at the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. And to be honest with you, it's amazing that we're talking about disclosure, because some time ago, many years ago, I got a job working for a really big, large organization. I didn't disclose dyslexia, and I thought I could actually hide it. If I have to be honest with you, I thought I
Yeah.
could. I really wanted the job. I'd been unemployed for too long, and I really needed a job. I've got children to look after. So I didn't disclose my dyslexia. Now, one big lesson I learned was that my whole well-being just went out the window. I was so frightened. Every day getting ready to go to work was a battle. Shall I tell him? Shall I not tell him? Shall I not? And eventually I was able to say to my line manager, I have dyslexia and this is why I'm falling behind with the work I'm doing. I couldn't do the job. And that's the honest truth, Nathaniel. I really struggled in it. And what they decided to do is to put me in another department. And that didn't even go very well, because the worst job you could ever give someone who's got dyslexia is filing. And those days I was put in a filing, sort of to do a lot of filing at the time. So that didn't work out good either. And I had to leave in the end. So what I have learned from that is, personally for me, and I'm speaking for me and not anybody else, I would first, if I ever went for a job interview, that would be the first thing. Depending on what job it is, I would actually say to the employer or the HR department, I have dyslexia. And even though I'm applying for this job as, let's use, for example, a teacher, I know that I have, what's it called? The software that helps us to do our work.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it at the moment.
Assistive technology?
That's the one, yeah. I've got my assistive technology, which I can, use, maybe if I'm working from home, I can use that. And if I am working in the workplace, could we possibly get access to work help so I can perform better in the job that I've been given to do? So from a personal point of view, I didn't disclose, and it did not help me in any shape or form. However, we are all different. And it's one of those things that is difficult, whether you do or you don't. But like you said, Nathaniel, it depends on the individual, really, isn't it?
And honestly, I would love to say disclose, because it feels like I'm a bit of a betrayal by saying that sometimes the right answer is not to. But what I say to someone, if you're in an organization which you feel that disclosing would be a hindrance to you rather than an advantage, it's probably not an organization where you'd be very long term. So
absolutely,
if
I agree.
the goal is to get the job, then maybe holding it back might help. But if the goal is in a job for a good amount of time and something you'll love and you feel yourself in, then the answer's there, really.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, employers, the employer that wants to keep you will understand, perhaps go away and do some research on dyslexia if they've never worked with anyone who's got neurodiversity. One of our shows we did some time ago with Simon Phillips, I think Simon works for an organization. And, one person he did support in the workplace did so well in the job she was doing that Simon was an ex-teacher. So he said, look, I understand dyslexia, I understand what it's all about. So he gave that particular person all the help she needed. She excelled to greatness.
Yeah.
I think sometimes employers, it's just about finding out what it's all about, what the condition is about, and maybe working to the strength of that person you've employed, so to speak. And I bet you get asked this question all the time when people come to you. Yeah. So I haven't got the answer, and I guess you haven't got the answer, but I guess it depends on the individual. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to sound too much like a politician by not actually giving an answer. But,
exactly.
But
yeah.
there really isn't, because if I just told everyone to disclose and they come back with negative experiences, no one would ever do it again. It's about having as much information and knowledge as possible to make an informed decision. At the end of the day, you can't tell the future. You don't know how someone will respond. But if you go in there with at least a bit of a background knowledge, so for instance, if I was applying for Virgin Media, I would say, I understand that your founder is dyslexic, and as a result of that, they were able to go on to do that. I also have dyslexia and have able, so you always find a foot in the door, like an opener, because dyslexia is like an image. And if someone has only got like a bad image of dyslexia, when you mention it, that will be the image they think of. If at the start of that conversation, you paint a better picture, so rather than, an image of a kid in school struggling, achieving low grades, and you replace that image with Richard Branson starting a billion-dollar company and essentially taking over the world in a positive way, you've set the foundations for a positive image in the hiring's eyes.
Absolutely. And to be honest, Nathaniel, you said something that was really, really prominent as we were talking. How many of us are having dyslexia can be at the level where Richard Branson's at? How many levels of people are at the level where Jamie Oliver's at? So whenever people go, oh, it's Dyslexia Awareness Week, for example, let's celebrate all the famous people. And I'm like, well, it's great. It's great. Yeah, let's talk about the famous people, which is brilliant. But you and I do also doing a very good job, Nathaniel, to be honest with you. Yeah. We may not have millions, but hey, we're doing what we can to support the dyslexic community. So I think it's what resonates, isn't it? I mean, Richard Branson, fantastic. And he's one of I do really work and everything. However, I don't have my own island. So how do I kind of compare?
I'm working on it, but you know what, I'm a bit torn about celebrities and like using them as our role models. Like obviously we're called exceptional individuals, and everyone thinks that obviously we must be promoting all the celebrities, and we're not, because celebrities are great for opening doors. If I want to talk about dyspraxia, I'll use Daniel Radcliffe. If I want ADHD, I might talk of Justin Timberlake, or like it's good because it makes people at first see the image. But what continues the discussion is by seeing everyday people.
Absolutely.
And that's achievable, really. Because if you're the person, in school, you're struggling, you need that kind of like the missing gap. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want to be Richard Branson. I wouldn't want to be Bill Gates. I'm quite happy being the level I am. I'd love an island, but I don't want the baggage that comes along with it.
Yeah, and there's so many other dyslexics. You've got Will Smith, who's a great actor, who's got dyslexia, Whoopi Goldberg, who's got dyslexia, and a brilliant actress. So there are other role models out there, but obviously, we only look at the ones that, I don't know, that everybody uses as an example. Yeah, and again, representation really, really does matter as well. I just thought I'd bring that in.
Oh, absolutely. Like if you one of the biggest criticisms I get from my workshops, I take it full-heartedly, is that Nathaniel, you're showing a lot of white men, and there isn't enough high-achieving dyslexic role models who are white, BAME, different religions. Off the top of my head, I think of Whoopi Goldberg. I really struggle to think of any others,
Well, we know loads. We have thousands. Yeah, we know so many that have got dyslexia. I mean, we recently did an interview on a young man who works on ITV News called Anton Allen. Anton's done amazing stuff. He's got dyslexia, and he's a newscaster. And for me, that's somebody, I resonate with. And I resonate because he's worked really, really well and got to where he is. There are other people in the pipeline. I think somebody mentioned, what's his name? Usher, or one of them, singers, I'm not too sure. Yeah. But there are loads. But again, it's the representation has always been. And we have phone calls sometimes. Oh, do Black people have dyslexia? Yes, we do. Everybody has dyslexia. Yeah. In every culture, in every religion, there is dyslexia. But it's a matter of, and that's what we're working towards. A2I Dyslexia and many other organizations are bringing change and bringing, representation.
But do you know, one thing I would say that, like, if you're an individual and you want a role model, or you want to talk about someone you admire and to use dyslexia as like the way in, you do not need to have any proof they have dyslexia, because a lot of the people, when you Google famous dyslexics, to be honest, it's news to them. They don't know. Yeah. And I mean, I use it all the time, but I don't actually like the word, like dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism. I'm not really a fan of it. I use it because, otherwise no one knows what you're on about.
True.
But what I would prefer is just learning difference, a different way of thinking, a different way of solving problems. And if you start looking at dyslexia like that, suddenly anyone you admire is neurodiverse. So I could, for instance, say, I'm trying to think who's not neurodiverse I would admire. Well, I'll go with John Lennon because I admire him, even though he's dyslexic.
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. What I admire about him isn't his dyslexia and how he overcame it. I admire his creative way of thinking and how he achieved and what he was able to produce with his mind.
Yes.
So you're appreciating the mind, you're not appreciating the battle.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Really awesome. Thank you so much, Nathaniel. There's so much I've learned from you in a space of maybe half an hour or a little bit more than half an hour. And the way you're kind of explaining things, it's just like, wow, you know, great. Honestly, you're doing amazing work. Really great. My last question before we go off air.
Cool.
So can you give me maybe 3 or 4 top tips of how to access the job market as a dyslexic stroke neurodiverse person?
Okay, so my top tips on accessing the job market as a neurodiverse person, I think research, you know, research. You can't just, you know, the world isn't fair, and our goal is to try and make it fairer. I guess, you know, the old saying goes about utopia. Utopia is impossible to achieve. So when people say, oh, you're an idealist, you know, you just want utopia, don't even bother. That's not the goal. The goal is to aim for utopia, knowing that you'll never achieve it, but to always have it as your goal. So when you're applying for like the right roles, you should aim completely high, even if you don't truly believe it at the beginning, but to go for it. And by doing your research, you can try and start to find out what companies are inclusive, who's achieved well, look at satisfaction. For instance, there might be a company which has no dyslexic employees. Probably not true, but on their records, they've got nothing. But if you just go to an employee and ask them, are you happy? You know, what's the culture like? Because if someone who has dyslexia is struggling in an organization, I almost guarantee that someone who doesn't have dyslexia might also be struggling because the culture isn't there. So think less about dyslexia and think more about, you know, how do they look after their staff? So research is the first one. The second one is learn how to communicate your mind to others. Easier said than done, and I'm not asking you to be 100% certain that your kind of little elevator pitch on how your mind works is completely factual, because it's developing, it's always growing, but at least be able to, in a nutshell, say, this is how my mind works, and you can develop and you can grow that understanding with them later on. But start off with a positive way of thinking. And the last one is to know that you are not alone. Everyone always thinks that dyslexia is an entry-level thing, that it's something for underachievers, when there are amazing directors, amazing like middle management, amazing kind of partners and organizations who have dyslexia. The only difference is they found ways of overcoming the challenges. So find your own solutions. So to summarize, do your research, learn to communicate how your dyslexia is for you, and lastly, wow, what was the last one?
It doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if there is a last one or not, Nathaniel, because what you've said is just, it's just, how can I put it? Icing on a cake is the word I want to use. You know, and if there is a last one, of course, you know, you're more than welcome to share it with us. If there isn't, absolutely fine. And you said something there that, you know, there are great people. I've met some amazing people, you know, top organizations, like big directors and CEOs and so forth. And they'll go, oh, I have dyslexia. And I come back sometimes, I think, oh, how did you make it to where you are now? And do you know what a lot of them say to me? I use my strengths with what I'm good at, and what I'm not, someone else will do it for me.
Yes, delegating is the key. And yeah, I just remembered the last point was, you know, be strength-based, always have a solution, be solution-orientated. Never go to someone with a problem, go to someone with a solution. And you are totally right about that. If a lot of people with dyslexia tend to have very entry-level roles, when actually they're the worst jobs possible, because you're expected to be an all-rounder. When you get to management or a little bit higher, that's when you can use the good old delegating, and you can let someone else do what you're not good at, and you can do what you enjoy doing. So, you know, hold on there and aim higher, and you'll be better off for it in the long run.
Wonderful. Nathaniel, thank you so much for coming on A2I Dyslexia Show. We appreciate all the tips that you've given us. If anybody's interested, how do they contact you? I mean, I know you're on LinkedIn and all the others, yeah?
Well, just go to exceptionalindividuals.com, and on the looking for support tab, you can kind of get in touch, have a one-to-one with us, or we're on all the social medias, or for me, I think I'm just like at Nat Hawley on Twitter, or find me on LinkedIn, but always happy to have a conversation.
Wonderful, excellent. Thank you so much. And of course, we will share your all your links as well when we post the videos and everything on our social media platform. And I just want to say thank you very much for the amazing work you're doing. Continue doing what you're doing, because there's a huge market out there, particularly during COVID-19 at the moment, where people have lost so many, people have lost their jobs. And we've had phone calls where people have said, look, I've been working for over 20 years for a particular organization. I've now been laid off. How do I move on with having this condition, dyslexia? How do I now move on to the next level? There's all sorts of things going on, but your organization, I'm hoping, will be able to help many people who need that help and move forward to unlock their full potential. And I want to say thank you very much to our viewers and also to our listeners. And yeah, thank you very much, and take care of yourselves, and all the best for the future. And whatever you do, consistency is the word I wanted to use, that you must continue doing what you're doing and not to give up. I mean, I always say to myself, imagine I'd walk away the first year of A2I. The first 6 months of A2I, we had one client. In a year, there was only 2. But you know what? 2 people were enough for us, for me and the organization to go with, in what because I believe, and I also knew that there was a niche market out. I just want to say that to anybody who's watching at the moment, please don't give up, because there is hope. Thank you very much, Nathaniel, for coming on our show.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye for now. Bye.